So today, we're going to dig into the intellectual DNA of one of the most powerful figures in the Middle East, Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. We're going to peel back the layers of day-to-day politics to really understand the core ideas that have shaped his entire worldview, from his youth all the way to today.
It's a huge question, right? Where do a leader's ideas even come from? Are they just a product of their time, their education, the books they happen to read? Well, for Khamenei, the answer is a really fascinating mix of all three, forged in a time of incredible political and intellectual chaos.
To really get a handle on the man, you have to understand the world he grew up in. We're talking about the Iran of the Shah, a monarchy that was a very close ally of the United States. For the opposition, the Shah wasn't just a king. He was widely seen as an American puppet. And this wasn't just paranoia. It was deeply rooted in things like the 1953 coup, and it basically shaped the entire resistance movement. And it's in this environment of opposition that the young Khamenei's thinking really started to form. He wasn't just another revolutionary, he was an intellectual, someone who was actively absorbing and mixing ideas from two very different and often conflicting worlds. Now, this is what's so interesting about Khamenei at the time. Unlike a lot of other clerics who pretty much stayed within their religious circles, he was out there, engaging with secular thinkers, poets, novelists. I mean, sure, he was studying Islamic law, but he was also reading Victor Hugo and John Steinbeck. This immersion in both worlds gave him a unique perspective that would become absolutely crucial to his political ideology. And look, don't just take my word for it. He said it himself. He wasn't some outsider looking in on these debates. He was an active participant. This quote from 2012 shows him looking back on that time, really emphasizing his role as a kind of bridge between the religious seminary and the secular opposition. He was standing right at the crossroads of every major anti-Shah movement. So what was the first major idea he absorbed from all these secular circles? It was a diagnosis of Iran's main problem, a concept that was known as Westoxication. This term, Westoxication, was the dominant theory among Iranian intellectuals back then. The idea was that the West, especially the US, wasn't just trying to control them politically or economically. No, it was something way more sinister, a kind of cultural colonialism, designed to wipe out their local identity and make the country easier to dominate. And this idea was really pushed by two of the most influential thinkers of the time, Jalal al-Ahmed and Ali Shariati, both of whom Khamenei had strong connections with. Their writings just perfectly captured the anxiety of a generation, framing the fight against the Shah not just as a political battle, but as a fight for the very soul of Iran. The key thing to get here is that the threat wasn't just about armies or embassies. It was about Hollywood movies, Western fashion, liberal ideas, you name it. The belief was that Western culture itself was a weapon, designed to soften the ground for political and economic imperialism by basically rotting a nation's culture from the inside out. And this quote shows you the turning point perfectly. I mean, if the problem is a cultural attack coming from the West, then the solution has to be a cultural defense, right? For a lot of people, including Khamenei, the most powerful weapon they had to defend their identity was Islam. And that's how a secular diagnosis started pointing toward a religious solution. Okay, so if the diagnosis is Westoxication, what's the cure? Well, the young Khamenei and others like him started looking for an answer, a real framework for how to fight back. And they found it in the writings of an Egyptian thinker. That thinker was Sayyid Qutb. As the lead ideologue for the Muslim Brotherhood, Qutb offered this incredibly powerful vision of Islam not just as a personal faith, but as a total system for life and government. He basically provided the blueprint for action that so many revolutionaries were looking for. This quote gets right to the heart of Qutb's ideology. He argued that Islam was never meant to be this private, passive thing you do inside a mosque. No way. He saw it as a revolutionary force, a complete program designed to organize society, build a nation, and actively go out and shape the world. And Khamenei's connection to these ideas was deep. He wasn't just some passive reader. He was so completely bought into Qutb's vision that he personally translated his books into Persian, actively working to spread these ideas all through the Iranian opposition. That's a serious personal investment. And just listen to this. This quote is from Khamenei's own introduction to his translation of Qutb. He's not just translating, he's selling the message. He fully embraced this vision of Islam as a governing ideology that was destined for global influence. For him, it was the inevitable future. So now we've got the two key ingredients of his early worldview.
The next step is seeing how he blended them together into one single, powerful ideology. And it's a really clear synthesis when you lay it out like this. On one side, you have the secular intellectuals who identify the illness, Westoxication, this form of cultural imperialism. And on the other side, you have the Islamist thinkers like Qutb, who offered the cure, a revitalized political Islam ready to be used as a total system to fight back against the West and build a new society.
And this was not just theory. After the 1979 revolution, these ideas became actual state policy. This image, showing Khamenei not long after the American embassy takeover, is just a perfect visual of that synthesis in action, the anti-imperialist diagnosis fueling a radical Islamist prescription.
But, that was over 40 years ago. Why is this intellectual history still so important? Because these foundational ideas are still directly shaping Iranian policy and Khamenei's decision-making today.
You can draw a straight line from these early ideas to his current worldview. That concept of Westoxication, it translates into a deep, unshakable suspicion that the U.S. is always seeking regime change. The critique of Western culture, that fuels his belief that the West is in a long-term, inevitable decline. In Qutb's vision, that's what underpins the view that Islam is the rising, superior ideology. It means every negotiation isn't just diplomacy. It's another battle in a long, drawn-out anti-imperialist war.
So, when you boil it all down, Khamenei's worldview wasn't really formed in the halls of power. It was forged in the intellectual circles of the opposition decades ago. His actions as supreme leader today are a direct echo of the books he translated and the debates he had as a young revolutionary. And that leaves us with one last big question to think about. When one person's youthful ideology becomes the foundation for a state's policy for decades on end, it really forces you to ask, how much does the library of a single leader truly define the destiny of millions?